Well, welcome back to the vintage cottage garden, and we are going to show you our Tayberry and Loganberries down in the vegetable garden today. They're growing on this sunny west facing wall where they have been established now probably for 20 or 30 years, and we are just starting to get some ripening fruit on the middle Tayberry. These long Tayberries ripen up gradually over around a 3-week period. These are nowhere near ripe yet. You really need to let them get to a really rich burgundy red before considering picking them, because before then they're really quite bitter and tart. Because of the quantity of fruit these vines produce, we don't tend to net these, and the birds will have their pick, particularly at the beginning of the season, but there's usually plenty left to pick even if you leave them to fully ripen. Tayberries produce these massive long new growths each year. Comes out of the soil at the base of the plant and tends to run horizontally and fall exactly where it's going along the soil. These are next year's fruiting vines. You can see where last year's have been tied in, pruned and truncated to the top of the wall, and that's where these fruiting spurs are coming from for this year's fruit. The stems on Tayberries are covered in these sharp, tiny little thorns. It does make handling the plants and picking the fruit quite uncomfortable. So, some genius came up with this plant, which is a Loganberry. Very similar form to the Tayberry. Flowers on large steers growth, just as the Tayberry, and the management of the two is identical. Loganberries flower and fruit a couple of weeks later than Tayberries, so having one of each can have the additional advantage of extending your fruiting season. Look at the difference in the stems, not a thorn in sight. It makes a Loganberry far more easy to manage than the Tayberry. I would say they're slightly less vigorous. Certainly the length of the growth they put on each year is nowhere near the length that a Tayberry in the same position does, but it's just much more easy to manage, tie in and to pick. This Loganberry is probably not going to be ripe for another 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the weather obviously. There is a slight difference in the flavour of the fruit. Appearance wise they look very similar. They do pick differently as well. Loganberry tends to come away from the central core, whereas a Tayberry tends to come away with its central core. That does make a slight difference depending on how you're going to eat them, but if you're jamming with them, both can be used as picked. Flavour wise they're both very similar. A rich, really heavy raspberry flavour which jams superbly. In fact, I think jam is the best use for Tayberries and Loganberries. Leave the raspberries for the dessert table.